You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Welcome back, and thanks so much for coming back to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. It's been a fairly solitary week for Trigger and me. Cushy is now a day ahead, and Trigger and I have been putting in some real miles. In fact, we've done 80 miles in the past 4 days, which for us is a heck of a lot. We think we're going to catch Cushy and maybe even Dodger Dog, but for the time being, it's just the two of us. We're both quiet hikers, and we spend the days hiking around 100 yards apart. Good to know that somebody nearby has your back, let me tell you. And it's one of the things I've really gained out of hiking with Trigger. You know, we've helped each other silently, but we've helped each other on the way. I'm sure he'd say the same, actually. Now, before we tell you about those 80 miles, let's hear from our sponsor, Sawyer.
When I hit the trail in 2014, I soon discovered that I come with the wrong water filter. Everybody else had a Sawyer squeeze. Eventually, I bought a squeeze and I loved it. I'm going again this year, and top of my list of things to buy was the new micro squeeze filter by Sawyer. Like all Sawyer stuff, it just works. You can filter up to 100,000 gallons, and their full-size squeeze filter comes with a lifetime warranty. Last year, believe it or not, more than 4 million people got clean water through a Sawyer water filter. But if you think that Sawyer is just about water filters, you could not be more wrong. Nope, they supply everything to protect you, both in the backcountry and the backyard. Protect your gear and clothes as I did with their permethrin fabric treatment, which is 100% odorless after drying. With all the ticks and bugs around, this is an absolute must. They also provide sunscreens and first aid products. Find out more by visiting Sawyer.com.
Thanks so much, guys. Your support means so much to me. So, with Trigger and I kind of soloing this week, the days have been almost exclusively about us. So let's hear how we put in those 80 miles, starting with day number 97. Day 97. Pine Grove Furnace General Store, mile 1104.2, to Boiling Springs Backpackers Camp, mile 1123, an 18.8 mile day. Trigger's wife, Karen, took us back in the morning to Pine Grove Furnace and said goodbye to Trigger, obviously, and me. Left us with tons of cookies, which Trigger then handed out some cookies to some hikers at the Pine Grove Furnace store, and we set off. It was a really flat, wide path. I remembered it from last time, actually, and it was lovely to just wander down this path. I can see why if day hikers came out and just walked from Pine Grove Furnace for a mile or so, they'd say, well, God, this Appalachian Trail's easy. But then, of course, it turned up. And actually, we could have carried on walking the flat path for a while, and it was quite a sudden turn. And in fact, a tree was down right over the entrance to the turn, so we had to clamber through the tree and to get on up through to the back, so further up on the AT. So then we had over about 3 miles. We had a 700-foot climb. It wasn't too bad, As I said before, I'm getting used to these climbs now, and none of them frighten me. I mean, I know they get me exhausted, get me sweating, and so on, but really, they're quite enjoyable in many ways, to be honest with you. About 8 miles in, we were going very well by then, doing just I think under 3 miles an hour. We took a little diversion to the Green Mountain General Store. We're very keen. I seem to remember back in 14 in New York there being great places to stop, delis to stop very regularly at the road crossings. And it's always good to find a store that's not too far away. And this was just a small walk up the road. So the Green Mountain General Store, Trigger and I went in there. I had a Gatorade and a BLT sandwich, and Trigger had a pint of ice cream and a root beer. He obviously wanted to make up for not having his half-gallon challenge, so he had a pint of ice cream and a root beer. After that, we felt we'd had our calorie fix, and we had gentle ups and downs, and it was one of those really enjoyable walk. It was decent weather, but we knew the weather was around. We could hear some thunder for a while, and I was getting worried that we were going to be hit by bad weather. We were expecting bad weather all day long, and I thought to myself, oh God, the last thing we need is to be hit by this bad weather as we get to the flat ground that you walk into Boiling Springs on. Those people who have done this, the path goes down out the mountains, and suddenly you're in wheat and cornfields, and it's lovely wandering through them. They've made this little path for the AT hikers. There's probably 3 or 4 feet either side of the path, so we can just walk along through those fields. And I thought, well, the last thing we need is going to be a storm, and I was determined to set my tent up as soon as possible. And looking at the sky ahead of me, we could see there was dark skies around. At Boiling Springs, they don't let you tent in town. We set up in the backpackers' tent site. It's on the edge of town, and you would be shocked at the noise of the trains coming through. The trains literally are 30 feet from where the tent was. So we set our tent up, and then we went into town because we wanted to make sure if worse comes to worse, we'd be able to, if we had a drink in town, we'd be able to get back to our, at least to our tent site, and everything else would be warm in there. And we both took our umbrellas. We looked like a right pair walking through the town with just our silvery umbrellas, which we use obviously for our hiking. And I recall the tavern being a particularly nice place to go and have a drink, and I was really thirsty. Of course, I'd forgotten it was Sunday, and the tavern is closed. In fact, it's closed on Monday as well, actually. But across the road was a coffee shop, and so I asked about the opening hours for the morning, but where to get a drink now. And she suggested the place called the Allenbury Resort, which was about half a mile up the road. The last thing I needed was another half-mile walk after an 18-mile hike. But I thought, oh, well, why not? So we just started wandering up the road with our umbrella still. And it was a really nice place to go. Quite expensive, but decent beer. Had some Yingling on tap, which we particularly liked. Had a nice meal, and we got an Uber back to camp. Now, these Ubers, I tell you, while they allow you to hemorrhage money somewhat when you're in town, it is really nice to have the opportunity to get a lift right back to where we needed to be. And this Uber took us right back to the edge of town, and it still hadn't rained. It did rain in the night a little bit, but hardly at all. So we got into our tents, and there was a couple of other people. There was a couple of Italian guys there hiking, and they set up their, I'd never seen it before, they'd set up their hammocks one above the other on the same trees. Kind of odd, with a tarp over both of them. But they seemed quite happy with it. And there was another tent in the corner, and so we just set up for night, and that was the end of that day. But in fact, before I do finish that, I did get a text message that night from one of our Mighty Blue class of 2019. As I've said to you, it's been difficult for me to really get the audio right with these shows, with these conversations. So I'm just asking them to give me updates whenever they can. I've lost a couple of numbers. So Carlton Johnson, I'm talking to you. If you're out there, please send me a text. Tell me how you're doing. This is from Katie. And Katie said, "Hi, Mighty Blue. I'm currently at mile 604.9 at the Lick Skillet Hostel. My hike has been going well, and I'm loving my time on the trail. Crossing the quarterway point felt a little bittersweet. In the past couple of days, I've seen my first bears, tons of snakes, and a turtle. People on and off the trail continue to amaze me with their kindness and support. I'm so happy to be a part of this community." So there we are. We've got Katie still going. I know we've got Lotta still going, although she's restricted, I think, for time, so she may struggle to get to the end in time, but I don't think she's that fussed about that. Turd Ferguson, I've been hiking around recently. He's going great, doing well. And I haven't heard from Margie recently. Margie Mims Fireball, she's ahead, and hopefully she's still going as well. And of course, I'm still going pretty well as well. But having got that text from Katie, I thought I'd read it on that day. And that is the end of day number 97. Day 98, Boiling Springs Backpacker Camp, mile 1123, to Assembly of God Church, Duncannon, mile 1149.1, a 26.1 mile day, and the longest day I've ever done on the trail by about 4 miles. And really, we didn't know such a day was going to happen in this way. We knew it was going to be really flat through the fields and the muddy sort of forests, but it wasn't going to be. We hadn't planned to go all the way to Duncannon, and we didn't really know exactly where we were going to go. We had a bailout after about 13 or 14 miles. I mean, another bailout at 22 miles, and that was probably where we were hopefully going to get. But with the trains in the night, we were both. Well, I was certainly exhausted. I can't speak for Trigger, but I know the trains going through the night, and then early morning, the noise was horrendous. It really was. But as I say, we knew it was very, very flat. But certainly going through the small bits of forest we went through as well, and it was incredibly muddy in there, and quite a struggle to get around some of the mud in there. There's been a lot of rain recently. We hadn't actually had any ourselves, but we've been really, really lucky with the weather. And this particular day, it was a beautiful day as well. As I say, we were kind of at the back of our minds aiming for the shelter 4 miles short of town. It would have been a 22-mile day and equaled my longest day on the trail ever, I think. So I was slightly nervous about that because I knew there was a shelter, as I say, about 13 or 14 miles. And I thought to myself, realistically, that's probably where we're going to end up. We carried plenty of water, and we knew there were very few chances of more water to resupply, and that turned out to be the case. We got a little bit later on, but carrying 2 litres of water is, for me, more than I normally do carry. I try to drink as much as I can at a stop. I'm not as good as that as I should be, to be fair. But this time I thought I'd better take an extra litre, so I carried 2 litres. We got to the bailout site, and because the day had been so lovely and flat, and going through fields and through some forest, but mainly through fields, which was glorious. We thought, and there wasn't anywhere near as much humidity as there had been previously. So we thought to ourselves, let's go on to the Cove Mountain Shelter, a 22-mile day. How fantastic will that be? So we kept going. Eventually we got to the Cove Mountain Shelter, and there was quite a longish blue blaze all the way down to the shelter, and there were absolutely no decent tent sites. So we sat there for a couple of minutes, and we had a chat about it. Trigger and I had a chat about it. I think, and this is one of the great things about hiking with somebody. I've hiked with Trigger this last 4 days, just the two of us. In fact, probably about the last 7 days now. We haven't seen that many people, actually, to be fair. So it's the two of us hiking this hike, and I think it helps when you've got somebody who can encourage you to do something else. He and I both egged each other on in many ways, and we were sitting there talking about what to do, and he said, well, I could do the extra 4 miles, even though we were both exhausted. So I said, well, I can do the extra 4 miles as well. So we decided to go for it. And I'd forgotten how tricky the descent into town was. It's a very popular site up there. There's a great lookout rock. I can't remember what it's called, Eagles Rock or something like that. And a lot of people day hikers were coming up. I have no idea how more people don't get injured. There's some great steps down, but these steps are jarring. They're quite steep, some of them, and it was very, very rocky. And I remember last time I went wrong. There's a sudden up to the right, which I was talking on the phone with my wife last time. I missed it, so I was ready for it this time. And even then, I tell you, I nearly missed it this time as well, and I wasn't talking to anyone. But there it was. You then, the townspeople go further down, but we had to go up, the AT hikers had to go up for a last gasp, which is the last thing you need with about 24 miles, 25 miles on your legs to go up again. But we went up, found ourselves down back into the town, and we headed for the Doyle. And at the Doyle, we just sat there, had a couple of beers and a catfish dinner, which I don't think I've ever had before. It's very nice, really enjoyed it, but, I don't want to stay at the Doyle. It doesn't have the reputation perhaps it should do. It's a perfect place, it's right on the trail, but we'd heard that a lot of people would be going to the rectory at the Assembly of God Church. Apparently in the basement they welcome hikers. Oh my gosh, do they welcome hikers? We turned up there, which made this, as I say, a 26.1 mile day. It was on the path. There's a long drag out of Duncannon, High Street, Main Street, whatever it is. It seems like about 2 miles long. But walking from the door was about 3/4 of a mile, I think. We got there, couldn't find the entrance at first, eventually found the entrance, went downstairs. There was a bunch of people there already, including a young girl called Sneak Attack, who I hadn't seen for a long, long time. And she'd been injured, got off the trail a few times, injured again, got off the trail again, and yet there we were at the same place again. And she was there. Turd Ferguson was there later. He turned up later with Shark Tooth, and a couple of other people. I can't recall all their names. There was a guy called there's a young man called Young Guy. Really nice fella, very chatty guy. I liked him a lot. And we were in this basement. Basically, you sleep on the floor. You get your tent pad, your inflatable pads out. And you sleep on the floor, and it's pretty darn comfortable. They got a kitchen there. They got a fridge with water in the fridge. There were Cokes in the fridge. You could just help yourself. There was a shower rather, with fresh towels. It was so great for hikers. And of course, everybody tried to get near a plug. I couldn't sleep quite close enough to a plug, but I plugged things in anyway to charge everything up. And it's really everything that hikers need. Even had Wi-Fi and a password. What a nice thing to do. You know my feeling about religion, an organised religion, but this was a very Christian with a small c thing for people to do. And we really, really appreciated being there. But that was the end of day number 98. Have a nice day. Day 99, Assembly of God Church, Duncannon, mile 1149.1 to a stealth site just past PA 325, which was mile 1166.8, a 17.7 mile day. For those of you who don't know, by the way, a stealth site is a campsite which isn't an official tent site, one where you find a little space in the tree somewhere. But we'll talk about that at the end of this. I slept like the dead. It was funny, actually. When I went to sleep, there must have been, 8 or 10 people sleeping there. And because of the 26-mile day we'd done, I was exhausted. And I woke up, there were about 4 of us left. People had gone, obviously been getting ready around me. I had no idea, just literally no idea. In fact, I think there was just me, Trigger, Sneak Attack, and this young guy called Young Guy. And we had coffee, which they had a coffee pot there. I forgot to tell you about that. There's a coffee pot with Dunkin' Donuts coffee, which is a real bonus. And it was, and because we could cook there, so we boiled some water and poured water onto our biscuits and gravy. So Trigger and I were very happy, sitting at a table, drinking our coffee, eating our biscuits and gravy. The way out of Duncannon is, as I say, this long road. You exit the town and you come towards the, it's Juniata River and then the Susquehanna River. And I recall that the noise of the traffic I hated when I went over in 2014, and I hated it just as much this time. It's funny how when you get into the I guess the more rural lifestyle, being in the woods and hearing silence or birds all day long, you find traffic annoys you more than you could ever have imagined. And so it certainly was the case for me anyway. Now, I'd arranged for about 2 or 3 days previously. There was a listener to the show, a lady called Danielle. She found me through another show, funnily enough, Glenn Hebert's Horses in the Morning. And so she listened to that show, and then I was on that once, and then she started following our show, which was great. And Danielle wanted to give some trail magic to me and Trigger, which was very nice of her. And so we knew we were going to meet her at I think it's called Peters Mountain Road. I think it's called 225. And so I said, I think I'll be there about 12ish, something like that. And I'm pretty good at estimating the time I'm going to get to these roads. I've worked out some of our timings, and we having crossed the river, we climbed up, and the climb, my recollection was it was really, really tough to the first shelter, a lot of rocks. And there were a lot of rocks, but it was nowhere near as tough as I'd recalled. It's funny that my mind has really played tricks with me over the years. And even though I could read what it was about in my book, I do find it difficult to sometimes correlate what I'm seeing with what I recall. And that's kind of strange for me because everything's still a surprise to me. So coming over those rocks, while they were quite difficult, they were nowhere near as bad as I'd thought. Near the top, you actually, the trail took you around a few big blocks of rock, and I'm wondering whether or not that's been changed over the years to make it easier. But then we'd really got up into the rocks, and there was some clambering up and down, and it was quite difficult, but it wasn't that bad. I told Daniela if I was going to be early or late, I would let her know, but 12 o'clock was looking more and more likely. And then about 11, she said, okay, I'm parked now, so she's early, but I'm going to head towards you. She started coming towards us, and eventually we ran into her, and it was her and her beautiful little daughter, Emmy, who was on her backpack. She apparently had heard on the show that my pack is now about 27 pounds with food and water. Well, Emmy was about 27 pounds, so she was carrying Emmy on her back. And we just wandered back to Peters Mountain Road, across a bridge, and she'd laid out tons of food. She made 2 fresh lasagnas, which were beautiful, by the way. You would not believe the amount of lasagna that Trigger ate at that stop. I had about 3 pieces of lasagna. Trigger must have had 6. She said, it's all got to go. There was salad. There was also oranges, and there was water. I asked her if she could bring some water, and she did, and some Cokes, and it was really, really nice and nicely done. And there was tons of stuff for everybody. She'd laid out the cooler by the entrance back into the trail after the bridge, and people have been stopping and getting drinks as well. So that was so darn nice of her to do that. We headed off to the next shelter, which was Peters Mountain Shelter, and I knew that the water at this shelter, even though we didn't particularly want to stop there anyway, but we knew the water at this shelter was 300 steps down. The last thing I'm ever going to want to do is go 300 steps down and then 300 steps back up. And managing water has become quite a thing in Pennsylvania. And we've really made sure that whenever we get the opportunity to fill, we do have a drink first, and then we fill our bottles as well. And I'm often carrying a little bit more water than normal. But Sneak Attack came in, and she decided to stay the night at that shelter. She's been injured, and she's back on the trail now. She's very sensibly restricting herself to 10 or 11 miles before she really gets into it. I could tell it was killing her that we were, not so much that we were going on, but it was killing her that she had to stay at that shelter because, she just wants to get on with the hiker, really, I'm sure. And we went down to the road. Now, I seem to recall camping there before, right by the river, and being told I shouldn't have done it. So I started looking along with Trigger a little bit further along the trail, and we eventually found a stealth site. We'd found firstly a little sort of road that some of the big logging companies use. And we went down there. We thought we could camp there. And Trigger looked up and noticed there was a proper stealth site with a fire ring just inside the trees, even further in the trees. So we wandered up there and found a perfect spot. So there was just the 2 of us there that night. Really nice. And Trigger went down back to the little forest road and saw not only a deer, but a baby deer as well, which couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 days old with its mama. It really was lovely to see. But that was the end of day number 99. Day 100. Yep, I've been on the trail for 100 days from today. A stealth sight just past PA 325, mile 1166.8, to Swatara Gap, mile 1184.1, a 17.3 mile day. We knew we were going to set out quite early. And the reason we were starting early because the weather was due to come in early to mid-afternoon. So we really wanted to get off. There's a whole band of rain and storms coming through. And so we thought to ourselves, we can knock off 17 miles by about 1:30, 2 o'clock, something like that, which is normally ambitious, I guess. But we thought if we started early enough, we could do it. So we set our alarms for 5 o'clock. We started early, but we eventually got away about 5 to 7, so it still took 2 hours to get away. We were sitting down having breakfast, and Trigger said, "What about that helicopter last night?" I said, "What helicopter?" He said, "Don't tell me you didn't hear it." I did not hear it. Apparently, because there's some sort of army base nearby or military base nearby, a helicopter flew directly above us and right above the trees. It made so much noise, apparently. I did not hear a thing, which tends to show me I probably sleep a little bit better than I say I do. We decided because, well, Trigger told me that the first water was 3.5 miles ahead. So I thought, well, we need some water. So we went back about, 500 yards back across PA 325 where we knew there was a stream, collected some water from the stream, so we felt happy with it. And within minutes, we realised there's tons of water around because there had been some rain around, and it did rain a little bit overnight as well. There was tons of streams, and we could have got water by going straight ahead, but we'd gone backwards, which wasn't a great start. The hike looked fairly straightforward on gut hooks. There was a kind of lengthy but not too strenuous up. It was going to last about 3 miles, but there was a big 1 mile flat spot in the middle of it as well. So it wasn't too difficult. And then it looked like there was 8 or 9 miles generally downhill before 2 moderate ups leading us to Swatara Gap. Well, that sounded pretty easy to me. It did not turn out that way at all for me. I think because of the tiredness in my legs, as I say, we've done 80 miles in 4 days. I was feeling it. And there was plenty of mud on the path. The path had got so much water, and there were times when you had to wander into the bushes to try to get round the mud that would squelch above your feet. Pretty unpleasant it was. And there was tons of rocks, more and more rocks the whole time. And frankly, I started to feel that it was getting kind of tedious. There were no views. We had this full canopy of trees above us, so it was the green tunnel all the way through with nothing to see. Long stretches just straight ahead of us with just nothing to see. Plenty of mud, as I say. And I didn't particularly enjoy it. But one thing I did enjoy, you get to, and this is something that didn't exist in 2014 from my recollection. I think I would remember this. There's the option to take an alternate route, which they call the dry route. The main AT and the route that we took was the Beaver Dam. And I thought, well, that can't be too bad, can it? Oh my gosh. We got down there, and the stretch ahead of us, 100 yards ahead of us, was basically walking through water up to your ankles. I thought, this is not good at all. We found ways in which we could get off downed trees and logs, but we got squelched water right over our shoes. Fortunately, because I got these dry shoes, my feet didn't get wet. Trigger's got absolutely drenched, and it was a bit of a mess, to be honest with you. But I tell you what, it's a great way to do it. I really enjoyed it, actually. We carried on, met up with Turd Ferguson and Sharktooth right near the end, and an older lady called Firefly. And Turd was running out of food, so he said, have you got any spare food? And he's a buddy of mine. Of course, I would give it to him if I had it. I thought, I've got no food I can give away. Then I thought to myself, as I'd gone past, I've got some mashed potatoes. So good thing is we were trying to book our hotel. We decided to stay at the Comfort Suites in Granville. I remembered I had some mashed potatoes, so I got them out, and Turd was passing me. Fortunately, he and Sharktooth had caught up with us and were just going past. I said, I've got some mashed potatoes for you. So I was able to give him some food, so at least that was something. So we got there, got to Swatara Gap. We'd called an Uber. I screwed that one up by ordering it at the top of the mountain. So the Uber didn't really know where to come and pick me up. But we sorted that out. Drove about 12 or 13 miles to Granville, and here's where we are now at the Comfort Suites. And it's rained a little bit, but not as much as we were expecting. I don't know, we seem to have been blessed with pretty decent weather so far. But anyway, we've done laundry, which is good. We're going to go out to a brewery later on. But that is it. That's the end of day number 100, and we are pushing on towards, and we're going to pass tomorrow, in fact, the less than 1,000 miles to go point. So this is a period of time where we've been crossing some really good deadlines and not deadlines, memorable moments. And less than 1,000 miles to go will be quite a moment, let me tell you. But that's the end of day number 100. So, 100 days in, and still at it. It's hard to believe, really. I was hoping to finish on the 31st of August, but I really think that I could beat that by several days, actually. I'm now reassessing, and I think that the beginning of that week, around the 28th, is very doable for me. So, and I know that finishing around Labour Day is not a good thing, as Bruce Mattson found last year, because the local Native Americans take over the Baxter State Park around that time. So bringing it back to the 28th makes much more sense to me. So that's where I'm looking right now. It's been wonderful to look back over the 100 days and think about the awesome things that I've seen, the views I've seen, and the people that I've met. I just hope that the remainder of this trip is just as rich. Do you know what? I think it will be. I'll see you next time.